Yeah, getting back to the three Saudis out in California that where the FBI was looking into. That's the whole gist of Adam Fitzgerald's. He spoke about that. I'm trying to remember what he had to say about it, but uh, unless you recall anything. But
So I guess they wrote I don't know. They did a review of one of our 9/11 war rooms, and I don't
yeah,
know if I heard about it and I got a glimpse of it, and I responded to um, Nelson's because I'm on speaking terms with Nelson, and he shared that with everybody, I think. Or no, I did send one back to Adam, but then they shared it with everybody. Um, and Nelson and Adam do primarily deal with this type of man, I'm losing my train of thought here. Deal with the hijackers. I found it striking that when I shared something from Dan Hanley about the Boeing Uninterruptible autopilot, Nelson had never heard of it, never heard of the BUAP system, Boeing Uninterruptible autopilot. You know all this about uh, the hijackers, but they know nothing about the chance of remote control the planes. Which I want to set something straight because we had a friend on Facebook that got confused. When talking about the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot system, remote control, this does not negate the pilots at all. The pilots very well, I don't even know. I don't take a stance. Could have gotten on the plane, could have flown it, could be intending to fly it. But this was just the assurance that those planes were indeed going to hit those buildings. So sorry, I might have danced outside the lines of what you were asking there, Al, but
no, that I was just sort of following up with their letter, but I mean, they talk a lot about those three Saudis and you know how we don't know anything, and you know that's the whole keystone of the 9/11 story. And anyway, I just thought I'd bring it up because I just read that uh,
yeah.
email that went through.
Oh, uh,
Just
yeah,
a bust balls. Sorry.
those guys do know geopolitics. I gotta hand it. I just wish their delivery was better and they weren't so. I wish they wouldn't attack people. And when somebody attacks me, I'll attack them back. And I'm really bad at the turn your head, turn your cheek. J. Vernon McGee, a good Southern preacher, used to say, if somebody hits you, let them hit your other cheek. But then after that, after twice, the Bible doesn't say anything about that. Then you can whoop the tar stuffing out of them. He says, but um, yeah, they became verbally abusive about people, and I just wish they wouldn't do that because they do know their stuff when it comes to geopolitics.
Here we are again. Today is a truther day, I guess. First, we did a roundtable video of Jason Burmis. I thought that went extremely well. And here I am responding to Gene Laratonda and the 9/11 War Room. I just want to bring up 3 points that was raised, I saw, because I was mentioned. The 3 points are CIA malfeasance regarding 2 of the 9/11 hijackers inside the United States, and the FBI didn't share this, or FBI was not privy to all the information and couldn't share it. The second point I want to raise is about the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot system and Dan Hanley. And third point I want to raise is why I'm critical about certain people that you say I shouldn't be. And not a curse word will be used. So I know you're like waiting for the hammer to come down. That's not what this video is about anyway. So Alfred Magaletta is absolutely correct. I've been trying to tell you guys. I had a Zoom meeting with you and Sandra about condensing 9/11, and you still told me to simplify it. And it's impossible. Can't do it. All right. There's a lot of work to be involved. Like you say, this is not your area. Just like me, I don't talk about ground zero. I'm not an engineer. I don't know the pros and cons. But if you want my opinion, what good is that? Now, if I told you that I believe that World Trade Centers 1, 2, and 7 came down by some type of incendiary device, I would say yeah, to ensure that they collapsed. This is going to go neatly well with the Boeing Uninterruptible border pilot system, right? But I don't know it. My podcast, which is the only 9/11 podcast in the world active, and basically I interviewed David Chandler, Adam Taylor too. Most recently, my first episode was David Chandler, and thank goodness for Richard Cox. I didn't know what to ask him. So it's not about whether I took a stance or not regarding World Trade Center 7. It's just I don't talk about it. There's bigger things to talk about. Much more bigger things that I can get specifics on. You can't give me specifics when it comes to 1, 2, and 7. You can insinuate that there was people behind the implanting of these explosives, but you haven't gotten there yet. 22 years later, what are we waiting for? But I already have specifics when it comes to the mishandling of information. I have acts of lying, perjury by the Director of Central Intelligence. I also have acts of perjury from the Deputy Director of the CIA's Bin Laden Issue Station, codename Alex Station, Tom Wilshire. How? Their own testimonies at the 9/11 Commission and Joint House Inquiry. Specifically, the Joint House Inquiry. I even made a special podcast about Carl Levin interviewing George Tenet, the DCI, Tom Wilshire, the Deputy Director of Alex Station, and the Director of Counterterrorism, Cofer Black. This information's been out there since day one. And the 9/11 Truth Movement has been hijacked. Not initially, but came later. You're working on it, on defaming the Truth Movement. The real Truth Movement that involved with women that didn't consider themselves shooters. They were just citizens and victims. Victims because their husbands were killed in the World Trade Center attacks. They were called the Jersey Widows. And I forgot that woman on Fox News basically said they're all money-hungry bimbos or something like that. And came right out and attacked them. Well, after their questions weren't asked with the 9/11 Truth, the congressional inquiries, well, they basically gave up because the Truth Movement started slowly turning toward the fringe mindset. Now, this was not the initial agenda of the 9/11 Truth Movement. You had some of the best researchers on the planet. The best I consider is Paul Thompson, the best 9/11 researcher, bar none, on the planet. The most responsible and the most closely aligned to the word investigative reporter, 2 words. I would say he's the best version of an investigative reporter I've ever seen regarding 9/11. He is the founder and creator of historycommons.org. He also wrote the best 9/11 book on planet Earth, The Terror Timeline, which is basically what Nelson does currently, which is basically use news reports in chronological order to give you a very clear and concise version of what took place and what led to the 9/11 attacks. Not only that, you had others like Kevin Fenton, Ray Noel Silsky, John Duffy, John Gold, Robbie Martin, Abby Martin. They were out there, but they got replaced by the fringe theorists. And so because Alfred Magaletta, the reason why nobody talks about, besides myself and Nelson, and now it's Sean, Darren, Ben, and Eric, thank goodness for those guys, they're going to be the future. Nobody talks about the intelligence services regarding Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. Those are the 2 Saudis that you are referring to. This goes to the article that Gene posted, which I'm glad he did. I'm glad you talk about the 9/11 news. I watch every episode you make. I watch anything 9/11 related, even if it's Coopville. just to see what is the current state of the remnants of the 9/11 truth movement. There is no more truth movement. You're the remnants of it. So this issue about Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi basically traces back to years and years of the CIA and the intelligence, foreign and domestic, involvement with these two. That goes back even to the Balkans War in 1992, where they were first initially, that we know of the historical record, the CIA became aware of Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Mihdhar. And they're the oldest al-Qaeda members out of all the 9/11 operatives. They were at a high-level Malaysia meeting that the CIA knew about initially from the NSA. How did the NSA know? Because the NSA had a signals intelligence wiretap of bin Laden's satellite phone that started in 1992. Some say 96. And this one number kept popping up. And it was a house in Yemen. This house in Yemen was owned by Ahmed al-Hada, who's an associate of Osama bin Laden. Now, to Gene and Sandra and the rest of yous who are very confused about Arab names, sorry. But you can't change history. So you're going to have to learn about these issues. Because if you're going to stay stuck on ground zero, I mean, what has it gotten you this far? Nothing, really. So if you want to have specifics, this is the area to go to for now. Just like I told you that if you want to get to Israel, you're going to have to put enormous pressure on Saudi Arabia. That leads to foreign intelligence. But nevertheless, let me get back. So this house in Yemen was a global communications hub. In other words, al-Qaeda members from Yemen, Afghanistan, Pakistan would call this number because those phones were monitored by the domestic intelligence agencies of those countries. They didn't have what we used to have, was that we used to enjoy the protection of anonymity when we called somebody within the states or outside the states. That didn't happen after 9/11. Now those walls are broken in support of the American people. So nevertheless, they would call this house and relay a message to an al-Qaeda member anywhere in the world. That's why this was a global communications hub. And the NSA and CIA knew about these two guys because Khalid al-Mihdhar was married to the daughter of the owner of the house, Ahmed al-Hada, and her name was Hoda al-Hada. That made Khalid al-Mihdhar the son-in-law to Ahmed al-Hada. You'll see a connection to 9/11. And so the CIA knew about these guys. So the NSA. I didn't read the article by Radar, but if they didn't mention the NSA, I'm not surprised because the NSA because the CIA is covering for them. Thomas Drake, the former senior executive of the NSA, once told me that the CIA was more than willing to fall on the sword for the NSA. Who became the CIA director later? Well, it was the former director of the NSA, Michael Hayden. Anyway, the NSA would have the most information domestically regarding all the 9/11 hijackers. That's not me saying it, it's Tommy Drake. He's a whistleblower. Bill Binney, also a whistleblower for the NSA. Kirk J. Wiebe, whistleblower for the NSA. Eric Loomis, whistleblower for the NSA. They'll tell you. The NSA, can you imagine that they heard every single phone call regarding bin Laden's satellite phone in the house in Yemen 5 years prior to 9/11? What do you think they were talking about on those phone calls? Not talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers, Gene. He's a serious man. They don't talk about mundane topics. So when Alfred says this is the crux of 9/11, yeah, it is. Because what were they talking about on those phones? If they were talking about 9/11, that would mean that the NSA and CIA as well as the Saudis and Israelis inside the United States, who could have been running their own separate operation or running a co-joint operation with the CIA and the NSA. Hope I didn't lose you there. And didn't warn the State Department and the FBI, and also didn't have stricter security measures regarding plane security, that means the FAA, and as well as immigration regarding INS. Remember, we had a Saudi Visa Express program that fast-tracked a lot of these fundamentalists inside the United States. And that's coming from the U.S. Consular Officer, Shayna Steiger. She says it on record. So, if they weren't talking about 9/11 on those phones, that means, hey, maybe, just maybe, the state facilitated these attacks using bin Laden and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and Ramzi bin and all the others as the scapegoats. But here's the problem. In 2002, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and Ramzi bin al-Shibh gave an interview to Yoshri Fuda, who's a reporter to Al Jazeera, before they were caught, and admitted to their attacks. I've interviewed the guy who co-authored the book with Yoshri Fuda, The Masterminds of Terror. They met them. They admitted to their involvement. But that doesn't tell you the whole story. And in order to understand about how the intelligence services work regarding Arab fundamentalism or radical fundamentalism throughout history, you'll notice that the two are intertwined. Always. Always. Throughout history. All you have to do is take a look at the 60s and 70s regarding CIA involvement with secular, apolitical, and extreme right-wing political movements that destroyed socialist and democratic nations in Central America, South America, and Europa, even Southeast Asia. In the 80s, the end of the Cold War, what replaced it? Radical fundamentalism. Now that radical fundamentalism is over, Al-Qaeda is destroyed. ISIS is isolated in pockets of Iraq and Syria, some remnants in Libya, but they're not a global threat. Well, why don't we revisit the Cold War? Isn't that what's happening with China and Iran? And Ukraine? We're sending billions to give them weapons to these right-wing extremist nationalists that the CIA is assisting. So yes, Alfred, to go back to your point, that we talk about these things, well, I hope that gives us some context. We do. There's a reason why. The answers, some of them, are there. They're not at ground zero yet. Talk about specifics. Now, to go to the auto-interruptible autopilot, the Boeing auto-interruptible, I have heard of it. Yes, I know who Dan Hanley is. And he does bring this up. I told Dan Hanley, I said, I've never, ever disregarded this scenario. It's only a speculation. That's all it is. It's not proven that any of the hijacked planes had employed on them the Boeing Uninterruptible autopilot system. Here's my problem with this scenario, is that two things. One, Flight 93 never crashed into a target. It crashed in a field in Shanksville. Two, Flight 77, thank you, Darren Harvey, made a circle, a reverse back to the Pentagon. Remember, it was over the Pentagon at one point. They reversed back and descended into Arlington City and crashed the Pentagon. Well, if there was auto-interruptible autopilot, Flight 93 probably would have crashed into the Capitol or the White House or Camp David, where some assert World Trade Center 7, which was not a target by Al-Qaeda. They probably never even heard of it. Just like that guy, who lives in Idaho, 10 years later after 9/11, you're asking him, truth movement, saying, oh, did you know a third building fell? the hell would he know about it? By the way, it's not like the news reports didn't report World Trade Center 7. They did for the first week and a half. Now, how do I know that? Because Nelson Martin says all the news archives uploaded on his YouTube. And they talk about World Trade Center 7. Nevertheless, in time, yeah, World Trade Center 7 wasn't talked about. Now, I have heard about it. So you're wrong that I didn't. Right now it's speculation. There's no evidence to suggest this. I don't care about personal opinions and speculation. If you're going to use personal opinion and speculation, announce it. Now, it's not directed to Eugene. It's directed to truthers out there who love to say, well, there was auto-interruptible border pod, they were on these, the pilots may not have known and stuff like that. Don't say it as a matter of fact, because it's not. Do your due diligence and announce to your audience that what I'm about to say next is mere speculation. That's called being a responsible investigative reporter or journalist. Third point you raise regarding my critique of certain people, which I won't name. You know them anyway, Gene. I've made them prominent throughout the years for you. I'm always going to be critical of these people. I'm never going to side with certain people that say a plane didn't crash into the Pentagon, or that a plane didn't crash in Shanksville, or that there weren't hijackers on these planes. In the same light, you wouldn't want to work with somebody who says World Trade Center 7 didn't come down by controlled demolition. You don't want to hear it, Gene. I've heard you before. Yeah, no, you won't commiserate these people, but you expect me or Nelson or anybody in the group to basically work with these people? I got standards. I care about only the facts. Now, you do mention that I'm very thorough and stuff, which, that's a compliment. Thank you. I don't know any other way. I didn't come into 9/11 saying the U.S. government is responsible for this. I did it with a clean slate. 9/11 is a crime. Who are these people that hijacked these planes? All right, now that I want to know who these people are, what's their background, and all of a sudden I notice a branch out effect. Oh, the CIA knew about these people? NSA? What did they know? And who do they report to? They report to the U.S. government. But do they tell them the truth all the time? No. What does the U.S. government do? Well, they have foreign alliances with Israel and Saudi Arabia and the Gulf. Oh, what are those alliances about? What are those foreign policy directives about? And this goes back many years. So you have to, start researching that. And all of a sudden, once you do this, you don't have to be an expert. I'm not an expert. I'm not. I'm just a guy who just reads more than the average person. That's all. And I have more time. That's the only advantages I have. So when I read this stuff and I start putting it in chronological order, all of a sudden it starts aligning. And it answers certain questions. But there's more questions than answers. Always going to be that way when you have classified material and when you have disinformation online. People just start believing instead of knowing. And so I'm highly critical of certain truthers, just like I'm highly critical of the U.S. federal government. And I sound like a broken record at this point, but we're fighting a war on two fronts. One's a war for information from the federal government, and one's a war against disinformation from the media and the 9/11 truth movement. It's not skeptics saying that the planes weren't hijacked, or that a plane didn't crash in Shanksville or Pentagon, or that Judy Wood space beams melted the Twin Towers. That's the truth movement, some of them. But is that a representative of the truth movement? No, it's not. There's some very highly credible people in the truth movement. So I'm going to be critical of those who malign the truth movement by claiming they're truthers. They're not. I'm sorry to say, I know you got a very long-standing years and friendly connection with a certain individual who you had spent thousands of dollars on over the years. But Gene, this is my I'm going to be right out with you. He doesn't know what he's talking about when it comes to 9/11. 9/11 is not just ground zero. That's just one aspect of 9/11. And I never, ever said that it's not part of, the greater picture. It's part of 9/11. But you, Gene, basically say outright in the open, and I've heard you say it, that everything else outside ground zero is irrelevant. Imagine me saying that about ground zero. I say that it's not as specific in terms of importance with specifics. It is important because it's part of 9/11, what happened at the World Trade Center. But it's not the big picture. Never was. Tells you a small picture. It's a small puzzle piece. Just like the Hamburg cell is a small puzzle piece. Just like Khalid al-Mihdhar and the CIA is a small puzzle piece. Just like the Israeli Mossad using art student ring and the moving front companies is a small piece. Just like the Saudis giving funding to certain 9/11 hijackers in California. That's just all of a sudden you put the pieces together and you start seeing a picture that you think is what it is, with some pieces missing. But you can't basically show support for people who malign the truth movement by going in the public record and telling half-truths or outright lies. That's not a truther, Gene. And until you come to that realization, you will always support these people, and I will always be critical of these people. But here's the difference. You may get the majority of the people on your side, but there'll be a very specific group. These are the people that either fell victim to previous truthers who spread these falsehoods. And when you talk to the average person on the street who may not know anything any better, and because disinformation is a lot more prominent than actual information, they'll go back and listen to what you have to say or read your pamphlet and basically say, oh, wow, this, I didn't know this. Well, that's naivety. That's ignorance, right? They don't know any better. But your general audience is getting smaller and smaller. However, Gene, mine's is growing. Nelson's is growing. Darren and Sean, they have a new podcast. Their audience is growing. Ben and Eric of the Project for New American Century, their audience is growing. Why? Because we reach the right people and we interview the right people. And the person you're sticking up for, well, he's interviewing a right-wing fundamentalist that I forgot her name, the lawyer, who doesn't believe a plane hit the Pentagon. You know what audience they're going to reach? Fundamentalists. That's it. Nobody serious, nobody specific, nobody who's reputable in the intelligence community, the people that you want to reach, the actual whistleblowers, the ones that got in trouble. They're not going to talk to you or talk to the people that you support because nothing they say, well, just about almost everything they say is wrong. That's my only critique of you, Gene. I've always said that I love your heart. I just don't like your message. Your message is not resonating with everybody. And this is actually hurting you. Only you, not me, not Nelson. It's only hurting you. And that was the whole case. If you want to say that the CIA manufactured this, I wouldn't be surprised. They always go after big movements that question the government's involvement with terrorism or incident-related history. But I happen to think that a lot of these problems started at the very beginning. And those people are supported by the person you support with your time and money. So you're your own worst enemy here, Gene. I'm not your enemy. I never was. Just like I told Jason Burbis today. I'm not his enemy. I never was. I'm not a shill. I'm not a detractor. I care about being right, because history is told by the victors in most cases, but the honest people that are out there trying to bring light into the dark regarding about what really happened without any preconceived bias are being ignored or blanketed by people who are claiming to represent the truth and they're not. I'm very critical. I must admit, I have my shortcomings. I'm very critical when it comes to people that you support. I hate some of them personally. I hate them. And I want to see people like you succeed. But in order to do that, I guess you're going to have to learn from your failures, because you most likely won't take my advice and cut off these people from your life because you'll feel alone. Well, now you know how I feel. Now you know how Nelson feels, because we're not part of any group. We're independent researchers, and we're maligned by debunkers, truthers, and also ignored by the federal government. No one's going to, give us any time, because we only report on the facts. Am I wrong? Of course. But my strive is to be 100% right all the time, because I'm not comfortable just doing videos. I want to take the next step. In order to do that, I need legitimacy. I'm a nobody. And I want to build a movement. In order to do that, I need time, but time's not on our side. But with the future, like I mentioned, with Sean and Darren and Ben and Eric and some others out there who I'm hoping making their own channels, and they reach a bigger audience than me and Nelson ever could, that's how you build a movement. Not a bunch of people that you'll just accept because you want a bigger movement and you think everybody's on your side. I will tell you right now, Gene, the people that you think are on your side aren't on your side. They just agree with you. That's a difference. It's a difference. So I'll apologize for past actions for you. I've been very critical of you personally. I have a problem with that. That's my anomaly. I have to work on it. I think I'm much more improved than how it used to be 6 years ago, when I was just, Doc Holliday on the internet, because all it did was hurt me. But I'm trying to build a reputation to get to attract the right people, to build a movement, to maybe bring about change. You always talk about getting a new investigation. How are you going to do that with the people that you support? Well, the government's going to say, oh, yeah, hey, look into the backgrounds of the beliefs of these people. Isn't that what they're doing with Marjorie Taylor Greene? And they have every right to be, right? You're going to have to make some very tough decisions about who you are linked to and commiserate with. Because I'm sorry to say, Gene, they're not truthers. They just agree with you. And I think one person's fully taken advantage of it. You know what I'm talking about. So yeah, that's my thoughts about those 3 points. I hope, that you watch this, because this is not a personal beef on Eugene. Never is. I think you deserve a hell of a lot better than what you have put in. You put in a lot, even more than people I know in the skeptic community. You know how much it takes to come down on the week of 9/11, before 9/11, to put out banners on his cars and stuff? That's dedication I have not seen by anybody else. That's what drew me to like you. Wow, on his own dime. But the message is much to be desired. You hurt yourself with it. Now, I'm not telling you to not talk about Ground Zero. Keep talking about it. But you're going to have to expand, brother. Because if you only bring in one puzzle piece, to the show, nobody's going to get the whole picture. And I think I could leave it right at that. And I wish you a good afternoon. And to those in the 9/11 War Room, peace on you.
Sen yok, nitey acırım